The mic is live. Welcome everyone to this roundtable conversation on healthcare affordability and access with Senator Erin Murphy. I am Todd Lippert. I'm an organizer with the Rural Organizing Project of Isaiah, Minnesota. The Rural Organizing Project has the vision and purpose of a democracy and an economy that honors the dignity and worth of rural people. No matter what we look like, how we pray, how many years we've gone to school, no matter what. And it's good to be here with all of you today. I grew up in Larchwood, Iowa, which is not that far from here, just south of Laverne, close to Sioux Falls. I've been an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, served small towns in Wisconsin and in Northfield, Minnesota. I've served in the state legislature and am working on the Rural Organizing Project with Isaiah, pull people together to have conversations about how do we come together in rural communities to work on the things that we need for our communities. And we've been having a series of house meetings in communities across the state. And Anita Gall hosted a house meeting here in Marshall. And one of the issues that came out of that house meeting, not surprisingly, was healthcare affordability and rural healthcare access. We know that healthcare prices are outrageous, and there are many in rural communities that are uninsured or underinsured. If you're underinsured, if you're on the private market, you're often looking at high-risk, high-deductible plans. It's very common to hear of people are paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 out of pocket before they are receiving any benefit at all. And people are avoiding going to the doctor because of the cost of health insurance. And that's an extremely dangerous situation. Rural health access is also a critical issue, whether it's access to a hospital, specialists, mental health care. This conversation's been very much alive because of Fairview and Sanford merger talks. We want to have a conversation with Senator Murphy in particular, because not only did she grow up in a rural community in Wisconsin, and she's also been a healthcare leader in St. Paul. She's a co-sponsor of a very important bill that's gaining traction this session, which is a public option for Minnesota Care, or allowing people to buy into Minnesota Care. We want to hear some more about that. And she also has a vision for a healthcare commission, a public healthcare commission for the state of Minnesota that we function in a way that's similar to the Public Utilities Commission. And we wanted to hear some more about that from her as well. I want to take just a moment to thank the local PFLAG chapter that helped secure this space for us. And welcome Senator Murphy for this conversation. We have a series of people who are going to share their stories of what's happening related to healthcare access and affordability. And I'm also going to invite Anita Gall to come forward and help facilitate some of our conversation from here. So, Anita.
Thank you, Todd. As Todd said, my name is Anita Gall. I live here in Marshall, and I am a history instructor at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. I am also a community activist who believes very strongly in doing what we can to improve our communities and also to improve the lives of all Minnesotans. And so with that in mind, we've put together this roundtable today, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have. I'd like to introduce our first three speakers, who are going to share with you some of their stories about the challenges that they faced with our healthcare system, access to it, and especially its affordability, or actually lack thereof, all right? The first speaker is going to be Tyler Benscooter, who is a Spanish teacher who has driven here all the way from Fairmont today, so he might get, besides Senator Murphy, the prize for having driven the farthest, maybe. All right, Tyler will speak first. He will be followed by Greg Erdman, who is a math teacher from Fulda Public School, which is down in Murray County. And then it will be Cindy Vanderpool, who is and she wanted me to note this, hard-working farmer from Clara City. So I'll start it off with you, Tyler.
All right, I hope everybody doesn't mind if I stand. Between teaching and driving 2 hours, I really feel a bit more comfortable if I stretch my legs. Is that fair enough? All right. To start things off, I am from Fairmont Junior Senior High School, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what we saw with our school the last time that we had to change our insurance plans. Now, I started with Fairmont High School from a different high school just last year, and we were in the middle of something of a healthcare change. We were getting health insurance from the Public Employees Insurance Program, or PEP, and we were pretty happy with our first year of that. We were looking at much lower premiums than we had been before. But when I started, out of my paycheck every month, for a single person, no family, no kids, no particular health challenges, the school district paid for me $625.85 per month, every month, which is money that obviously cannot go to salary and cannot be used for books or desks or curriculars or anything else. This is what the district needs to pay. Now, that's $625, right? May not add up to much, but over the year, that translates into $7,500 in premiums before anyone has purchased a medicine, before anyone has done a physical, before anyone has made any appointment of any kind whatsoever. Okay? But I'm on the lucky end because I am single and I do not have to go with a family plan, which runs $1,661.19. The 19 cents is very important. So, translating that is $19,900 per year before deductibles, before copays, or anything of that kind. Under that plan, we also had a high deductible plan, which means that if I were to go for any kind of medical care, as a single person, I would also be responsible for the first $3,500 of care, with a 20% copay of anything beyond that. But that's not where the problem really started. The problem started going into this year when we got the somewhat rude awakening of a 50% increase in our premium cost. Rather than $625, we were going to be looking at, let me get this number right, $892 per month for a single person, or $10,705 per year. Or a family plan of $2,372, or $28,464 per year. Once again, this is before any medicines, any surgeries, any visits to doctors, any prescriptions of any kind. Now, I'm pretty happy with my teacher salary, and I think most people in my district are pretty okay with it, but when you consider that $10,705 would be going just to health care that I would never see in salary, if we can save money on that, all of a sudden, the pay for teachers could be increased a significant amount, and we can make a huge stride towards retaining teachers that we already have in the classroom. Now, with good news, we were able to find insurance through a different provider, Medica, instead of going with PEP, because the price just was not sustainable. And this year, rather than PEP, we are paying through Medica $765 per month, or $9,000 per year, $2,031 per family, or $24,000. So we were able to save a bit of money, but not much. Now, we were able to negotiate no more than a 15% rate increase for this year, and looking at our insurance committee and talking with Medica, it's already not looking very good. So 15%, using my rough math, that's about $100 extra per premium. So if we go up to that for the single person, we'll be hitting about that 800 number that we were trying to avoid last year, and for our families, that'd be putting right around $3,000, I guess. Now, this is already having some very real impacts on the other teachers in between the time that I sold this story at Capitol Hill in St. Paul, and now I had to talk with another educator in my building, a special education teacher. Her son had something of a dental emergency, a crown or filling that slipped doing an exposed root, and she was telling me that she was not able to go to her continuing education plans, that she was going to do, not able to take classes and get further certifications, because all of that money just immediately evaporated. Once again, we're talking $3,500 per person, or if you happen to be unlucky, let's say you get laid out by a bus and you're not able to choose what hospital you go to, you could be facing $10,000 in out-of-pocket or out-of-network costs. So, the issue is very severe, but there are some things that I know that we can do and that I'm working on making people more aware of. So I'll at least provide some answers. One thing that came from that I'd recommend everyone to do is I'm going to put in a plug for this book that I've been reading. Never Pay the First Bill. It's by Marshall Allen, reporter with ProPublica. It will give me some resources that can help you to tackle some of your healthcare challenges. Anyone with pad and paper, I would recommend write down the websites of fairhealthconsumer.org or healthcarebluebook.org. These are websites that rate or that list what an acceptable, what a reasonable price is for most medical charges. Now, on any of the bills that you people might receive from a doctor, there should be about 6-digit codes. They're called CPT codes. If you're able to put these into these two websites, the specific code, you can see what a fair price would be. In my family, we're dealing with a lung cancer issue right now. We're treating through Mayo Clinic in Fairmont. And looking at those CPT codes in fairhealthconsumer.org is pretty enlightening, as Mayo is consistently charging around 3 to 4 times what Fair Health Consumer lists as a fair price. So, the next time that you people are need to go to a dentist or a doctor for whatever reason, I would highly recommend you make use of that. Once again, that's fairhealthconsumer.org. And in that way, at least, I can't be too mad at Medical or PEEP or any of these others for their insurance costs. If a hospital is consistently charging you 3 to 4 times the cost of a service, or on rare occasion, I saw one that was about 75 times, that was funny. 75 times, then suddenly some of our rising premiums make a difference. So, as far as solutions, I don't have a ton, but I do have some. Number one, if you are a consumer, find out what a fair price, use those resources for you, try to find out what a fair price should be, and do not just pay the first bill. Do not pay the hospital what they're asking. Make sure that it's a justified cost. How many of you have ever been told the price that you're going to pay for a hospital procedure before you receive the procedure at a hospital? Can you just see some show of hands? That's about what I thought. Here's an interesting thing about American healthcare law that Mr. Allen enlightened me to. It turns out that if a price is not stated for you before you go and get a procedure, that does not give the provider of the procedure license to charge whatever they wish, which is a price. If they do not tell you what the price is, then it is assumed under American law that they are providing a reasonable and customary charge. If they are not, if they're going to charge you something exorbitant, then they are under the obligation to tell you that. So, that would be one thing, forewarned is forearmed. If someone is charging you $5,000 for a pair of 3 stitches, which is a real story from that book, right, then you do have recourse. 2 further suggestions I would add for Senator Murphy. One thing that we need to look into would be that sometimes, if you go to a hospital, the cash price is actually cheaper than your insurance price. One suggestion would be that we should receive a bill where we are listed the cash price or insurance price. If your insurance company cannot or does not negotiate a better price than you can negotiate simply by paying cash, then what value is that insurance company providing to you? The second one that may line up a bit better with your bill, as far as I can understand, would be reference-based pricing, which would be negotiating a price, say, at twice what Medicare pays for the same service with the same doctor, and saying we will pay no more than twice what the Medicare rate is. If you are looking for a public option, I would write that into the statute if it were me. So, I don't have all the options. I have a grasp of the problem, and I found some decent resources that are looking that way. I hope that this is helpful, and I'll answer any further questions that I can. Thank you all for listening, and that's all for me.
Greetings. Thank you, Anita, for the opportunity, and Senator Murphy for your time today, and all of you for coming to share. My name is Greg Erdman. I've been a teacher for 28 years in Fulton, Minnesota, and the lead negotiator for the last 10 years for our Education Association. I'm very gracious to have found such a wonderful place to work and raise a family. I'm here today to raise awareness and hopefully inspire a solution to a very large problem with the affordability of our health insurance premiums. Our school in Fulda is quite representative of many schools in our area. We work together, we face issues, we do the best we can. Our staff, administration, and board, community share a willingness to work together to stay on the map. Unfortunately, our premiums have doubled since 2016. But fortunately, we have worked together to keep this increase as low as it currently is, which is becoming unacceptable. We have implemented high deductible plans, HSA approaches, even higher deductible plans to keep premium costs down as low as possible, while still maintaining deductibles at $13,500 on average. This was very effective for almost 10 years, from 2006 until 2017, when we simply could not move any more to help ourselves. We went to PEEP and sought immediate relief for 3 years with a leveling of premium increases due to the large pool concept. This was wonderful until last year, when an unfortunate PEEP pool classification change and our higher health usage contributed to our 62% premium increase. Our pool is simply not large enough to weather this storm of uncertainty. This premium increase of $8,100 a family basically wipes out any professional advancements such as a master's degree, head coach's pay for not 1 but 2 complete sports seasons, or possibly choosing to sell the car, or do I pay the mortgage? We were fortunate, however, to be able to leave that program due to state statutes, but neighboring districts who saw increases in the 30% range were not as fortunate. The threshold was 50%. And they were basically forced to absorb that increased cost. Almost every rural school in southwest Minnesota is on the brink. Our historical percent increase for the past 6 years running in Fulda is 12%. Looking at a $20,000 policy at 12% for the next 5 years, and following a basic rule of 72, suggests that we are on track to be paying close to $40,000 a year in family premium with an arbitrary $10,000 to $15,000 or higher deductible. We simply have no more room to move. The teacher shortage we see now is only a precursor of what is to come at this pace. I still hold optimism because I still think we have a chance to work together. The question and possible solution I would have would be, what are the chances for rural schools to band together to form a mega pool to help level out the fluctuations? Perhaps negotiate a lower premium so we are at least on equal footing with larger schools. For example, in PEEP, we have roughly 40 people on our staff. Other schools may have 200 or 300 people, so they have more leverage for their premium negotiation. Now, PEEP was wonderful. However, PEEP is currently simply not a viable solution for us currently with the current pool definitions. Statewide health insurance for public schools would be wonderful. But at the same time, I realize that poses another whole set of challenges. I would like to thank all of you for your time. I hope this helps to spark conversation and a solution to a major issue that we all face. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, thank you everyone for inviting me here today. My name is Cindy Vanderpool. I'm from Chippewa County. My family and I own and operate a small farm and business in Kirkwood, Minnesota named Pastures of Plenty. We raise organic crops and direct market all the beef, pork, and eggs that we raise on our farm to feed families around the state of Minnesota. According to the United States Bureau of Labor Statutes, agriculture industry is 7 times more dangerous than any average job. Without affordable health care, we often worry that we'll have a medical emergency that we won't be able to afford. Okay. In 2021, that worry became a reality. I was diagnosed with stage 1B breast cancer. I underwent surgery to remove the tumor as soon as there was an opening thanks to COVID. After surgery, I received 33 rounds of radiation treatment and then underwent 6 months of hormone blockers before undergoing ovary removal. My cancer is in remission now, but with the reality that it could reoccur again has created a mental health challenge for me and my family. Thankfully, during the time, we received quality care coverage with Minnesota Care. If we didn't have that coverage, I don't know what we would have done. My medical bills were up over $100,000. And in farming and any small business, every dollar matters. Every year, we get our taxes done and wonder if this is the year we go without health insurance again. Just to say that there was times when our children were young, we didn't have health insurance. Sometimes farming can look good on the taxes, but not good in the checkbook. And even with MNsure, quality insurance can be unaffordable. Growing up, my parents owned and operated a flower shop for 36 years of my life. We didn't have health insurance. All we could do every day was pray that no one would get hurt in the greenhouses or get sick. Now, small families, small businesses have to compete with larger businesses for employees. When people are applying for jobs, the first thing that they will ask, what is your health care insurance? Health insurance should never be something that's in the front of a small business owner's mind. They should be thinking about how they can build their business and remain vital to be part of the small community that they live and love. Thank you.
Thanks to all 3 of you for sharing these stories that you have. They're very powerful. Now, I know, Senator Murphy, you are a co-sponsor of the Minnesota Care Public Option Bill this session. Would you speak a bit as to what the Minnesota Public Care Option is and how it could help with the issue of affordability and what we could do here to help get that through the legislature?
Thank you, Anita and Todd and everybody for being here today. And for each of you for telling your stories. Never, ever easy, but really important as a reminder that we're not talking about some abstract issue, something that's happening under the dome of the Capitol, but instead what we are talking about is our lives and the lives of our loved ones, and that's our business altogether. I am Erin Murphy. I'm a nurse and a mom, and I ran for office back in 2005 and 2006 after I took care of my mom when she had a cancer diagnosis. And she only lived for about 11 months after that and had to fight with the insurance companies to get the care she needed. And it was then that I decided I was going to run for office, because I do believe, and still do believe, that the power of us together is the thing that will make this work better for everybody. And I will say, in the number of years that I served, that I believe that more deeply now than I did when I ran for office in the first place. So I hope that is a hopeful sign for all of us together. I have long been a proponent of a Minnesota Care buy-in, a public option for anybody. I also think we should create the means to contract directly with providers and get the health insurance companies out of the middle of that. That's not in the middle of this discussion right now, but I think that they are in many ways the culprit that we are wrestling with, although healthcare has become a big business in Minnesota and it is a moneymaker, which is why people are seeing the increases that they're seeing. So this year is the first year. We have I'm so glad about this, a unified government that is with intention working to try and solve some real problems for Minnesotans. And the Minnesota Care buy-in is a real possibility in this session. I talked with the bill's author in the Senate on my way here. Her name is Melissa Whitland. I'm a co-author on this legislation. And it is moving in both bodies, both in the House and in the Senate, despite objections. And I feel like we've got a fighting chance to get this through both bodies and signed into law, which would bring real relief for people. And I think it is a step and not the final solution. I don't know that either of you know this, but I was the author of the Health Insurance Transparency Act a number of years ago, working with Education Minnesota to allow teacher bargaining units entrance into the Public Employee Insurance Plan, PEEP, as a way to deal with the exorbitant costs that educators were paying for their coverage. And the change that you're describing that allows PEEP now to do rate banding, as I understand it, is what is driving up the cost. So we created a means for using the current model to negotiate and contract, including a bid from the Public Employee Insurance Plan, a public pool, to drive down and create competition with the health insurance plans. And what they've done with that is come behind and try to underbid PEEP and drive up the cost of PEEP with banding to push people back out of that public pool. And I'm so salty about that. And when I hear about the numbers that you're describing, it is the problem that we tried to solve. And the moneyed interests, I will say, the health plans have come right behind that now. They've figured out how to make it work for them again and not for us. And I am, like I said, really salty about that. So, as you asked, I think that the public option is a reality for us. It's real. It by itself won't solve all of what we're describing, but it will create entry for people into something that we have known for a long time. Minnesota Care has been the law of Minnesota since, I always have to remember my numbers here, 1990, yeah, right, thank you. Because I was a baby organizer and a nurse when it became the law. It has been steadfastly in place for Minnesotans, and it is something that you can count on. It's stable. It is delivered across the state of Minnesota, and it would mean something significant, I think, for Minnesotans if they were able to make that choice. And that's why I think we have to do everything that we can do to push it through this session. So, as always, I will say, make sure that the person who represents you in the House and the Senate know that this is something that you want, even if they don't agree. And I know in this part of the state, many of the people elected to represent this part of the state probably don't support this idea. But that's not the only place that you should go with your advocacy. You should make sure the Speaker of the House knows that you live here, and this is important. You should make sure Carrie Dietzig, the majority leader in the Minnesota Senate, knows that you live here, and this is important. And any of us who have served in public office for any length of time and have spent time in a place other than the district we represent understand that healthcare costs are really hurting our ability to live the lives that we choose. It's getting in the way of the care that we need. It's getting in the way of the choices that we want to make in our families. And in many cases, it is creating a sense of despair, a sense of fear, a sense of loss, because I don't know if I'm going to get the care that I need when I need it. That's no way to live, and it is astounding to me that it is where we are at in the state of Minnesota. So as I said at the start, I do believe in our ability together. I still believe it outproves our ability together to make this different. And I think we're going to take a big step this session if we're able to get the public option across the line.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. I'm old school. All right, Tyler, Greg, and Cindy, thank you. You can take your seats. Thank you, we're going to shift the conversation a bit to talking not just about affordability, but also the challenges that people living here in Southwest Minnesota have regarding healthcare access. And as you know, our rural communities are diverse and they're becoming increasingly more so. So 2 different community members are going to share the challenges that they experience. I'd like to invite Samira Sheikh, please, if you would take a seat at the table, and Samu, if you would also. All right, I'd first like to introduce them. Samira Sheikh is the Refugee Resettlement Case Manager at United Community Action Partnership, which is more commonly referred to as UCAP. And Samu here is one of the leaders of Marshall's Karen community, and he currently works as a parent-student connector at Marshall Public Schools. Samira.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Samira Sheikh. I'm a case manager at UCAP. I work with our homeless population as well as our immigrant population. I'm going to talk a little about the people I serve. Well, I'm not elected, so where I'm from, the community I'm from. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. Thank you, Anita, for organizing this. And thank you to our representatives and the people that are in the office for us in caring about what our community is facing and bettering healthcare system for the people that they serve. So accessibility is one. I think a lot of my community education is number one. As Fairmont teacher was talking about, doing the research and making sure the price is right and all that. You gotta understand that the people or the community I'm from, we're way back in the line, and that's not even something in the picture. So what happens is, with less affordable healthcare, our option is no healthcare. It's cheaper to just go in when you need care and pay the bill there. Preventative care is not in the picture. A lot of the little things and big issues that could arise can be solved just by getting that checkup. And if that's unaffordable or knowledge of getting that is important, is out of the picture, then what happens is by the time we get the care, it's too late, or it's more expensive. So affordability is one thing. I feel like healthcare education is out of the picture for people in the community I'm from. Myself, even with some education, speaking from personal experience, there is healthcare available where I work. I'm on healthcare through my employer. I take the lowest premium available. I'm a mom of 6. I feel like there's more need on my family and my whole household rather than a healthcare premium that I may not even go in to get checked up. So education, better understanding what's available and all that is also a higher need. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Samu. Like Anita said, I work at my public school as a parent-student connector for some years now, and I've been living in Marshall since 2011. I came from a refugee camp from Thailand. I speak Korean. I'm here today to share a little bit about the challenge, the struggle and barrier in rural healthcare with my background, the Korean. I'm going to speak on behalf of my community and my experience with having access to healthcare in rural Minnesota here in Marshalls. I think the main challenge we are facing is about, there's some barrier like language barrier, like going to the clinics and trying to get a healthcare that, the healthcare itself, the health issues already have an issue, and then we're a culture barrier with a language barrier that's on top of that. There's a lot going on that our community has to grapple and taking care of so many staff. So I recognize at Vera and our local clinics, they recognize that there's a need in addressing those issues. So they have employers, certain people to help out with that as their community health worker or something. That's very recent. We haven't had those when I first got here, or like many of our family. I work in the district, I work the whole district. I know a lot of people coming in. There's a lot of issues with healthcare related. So I kind of know, when I told somebody, they move here, they have to have a certain immunization to get, cut out in order for them to go to school. I would tell a parent, go to, make an appointment, go to the doctor. They told me that I don't know how to make an appointment. There's nobody that could help me with setting an appointment and all that. When they go into the doctor, they don't know how to tell them, my kid has a certain thing that I need, all those kind of things. So that's a one thing about the language barrier and the healthcare system. When you call to make an appointment, all that, it's taking so many steps and all. It just makes it difficult to our community. We're a minority background. We're a person like me in my background to have access to those healthcare that we are needed. We are not mentioning about just the regular basic checkup and all that, thinking about the mental health, the treatments and all, the chronic health issue. For example, like dental and vision, you name it. The majority of our family, with my personal health, even including myself, we qualify through a low income, through the state covered health insurance. For example, many of the dental clinics in the area here don't take those insurance that you can just stay in town here. But you have to travel out of town like 1 hour away to get those healthcare taken care. So to share a little bit about my personal story about that dental thing, when I first arrived, I was in St. Paul. I was checked out, to see a dentist and all that. I remember one of the dentists in St. Paul told me, you had the best teeth that I ever see, among people. And then after, I just lived in St. Paul for a few months. When I moved down here, because of those issues, we have access to a local dental clinic here. So I didn't do a dental visit regularly. So just last month, I went to a dentist, and then they look at my teeth and they're really bad. So that's how difference. I speak the language a little bit. I know how to drive. I have a driver's license. I know people thinking about so many other people that don't have those skills, like speaking the language, know how to get around. And I'm new to the country. They have a lot of challenges. We have hundreds of children, and if it's not thousands, I'm speaking with the immigration, the refugee, and the low-income background. So those are the things that have limited the ability to gain access to the healthcare system here. I think that would be a lot easier if we can be seen here in town, in close, some of those things. Thinking about, more broader and complicated issues, mental health and all those, is a different story. I'm just talking about the simple thing like a regular checkup and those simple dental visit and visit, for eye cleaning and all that. But there's a lot of other things that we are facing. So I'm here to bring some awareness, and I thank you for your time for coming. And Anita, again, thank you for inviting me to speak to share a little bit my story and just speak on behalf of my current community. And thank you, Senator Murphy, for coming to visit us here. So we are so happy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know it makes you really nervous when you have to speak in front of a crowd. You guys are great. Senator Erin, sorry, Erin. So clearly hearing the stories here that we have a healthcare system that doesn't seem to be meeting the needs of all the people who live in our communities. And we know that you think a public healthcare commission can help. Can you explain what that is and how you see it helping these situations?
Thank you, Anita. And thank you for sharing your stories. It's heartbreaking to me when I hear the idea that there are higher priorities in our family budget than paying for our health care. And it also makes complete and total sense. The way that we expect people to put so much of their resources into something they may or may not use. And when your resources are scarce, that is a logical choice to say, I'm not gonna put my money there. When I think about the healthcare system that I came into when I first started practicing nursing in a rural place in Wisconsin, and then came here to work at the University of Minnesota or as a surgical nurse on the transplant team, the system was different then than it is now. And it's evolved and not in the right direction from my perspective. So I came to Minnesota. We were on the cusp of that work of creating Minnesota Care. We were a vanguard state in a nation that was wrestling with healthcare. And it was an exciting time because we were making a real commitment to the people that we would all together, not just create this public program for people who didn't have insurance through their employer, because we have chosen in America a decade or a century ago that we would get our health care through our employer, which I think has proven to be a flawed approach. But for people who didn't get their insurance through their employer, we're going to create something where they can pay a premium and get dependable care, Minnesota Care. But what also came with that was a series of reforms, including this idea of a commission that would put its arms around the system that is part public and part private. And at the time, our system was a nonprofit system. We lost that status a number of years ago in a negotiation over reinsurance. And so our health plans no longer have to be not-for-profit, which is unfortunate, and we've seen a lot of things change since that change occurred. So Todd Lippert, who has organized us here today along with Anita, was my colleague in the legislature, and this is something that we worked on together for 2 years. And I think there's something of real value in this idea of establishing again a commission that takes the each of us fighting for ourselves notion. You know, reading a book, going to a website, trying to figure out the list price, trying to figure out if I can afford my healthcare premiums or the other things that I need for my family and foregoing my healthcare. Each of us trying to navigate and game this system, understand, you know, if I do a high deductible plan, my premiums are lower, will I be okay if I get sick? What will that mean for me? All of us trying to figure that out on our own. And with every intervention that I feel like we have made as public policymakers, and the system comes behind that and figures out how to make it work for them instead of making it work for us. And we heard that today as we talked about PEEP and the Health Insurance Transparency Act, but I could tell you countless stories of public policy interventions that we have done to push us more in the direction of primary care and prevention rather than tertiary care that's the most expensive, so that we keep people healthier. We should be investing more of our dollars in the first visits and making sure that we can go to the dentist or the doctor so we keep healthy. Because health is not only the state we want to be in, but it's a value. But we don't put our money there. We put it at the back end when you're really sick. And then we know, and you explained this so well, it is really expensive to be sick. And for anybody who's had either a chronic condition or has one, or an acute condition like cancer, like it scares the life out of you because of the disease and the uncertainty of that, but can you pay for it? Because it's no longer the case that if you have a catastrophic illness, that your costs are going to be covered. It's become a game of money. and profit. It really has. And that's a big shift since my early days of work in public policy. So instead of each of us fighting the system, I think we've got a better shot if all of us together, through the power of what we do through government. And I think that's an important thing to say. I think the government is a tool for good for us. It is a representation of each of us together. And it may not always end up in the place that we want. Like, we're not going to get a guaranteed outcome. But I feel better about our chances coming up against a healthcare system that is profit-driven if we've got public voices with the power to say, these are the expectations for our healthcare system. All of you participating. Hospitals, if you're thinking about a merger, let's ask the question about that merger through the lens of what is in the interest of Minnesotans. Drug companies, you want to set your prices again? Let's think about what that means in the context of someone with a condition. We want to know what our procedures cost? Let's make that transparent for the people. And each of us alone can't figure that out. But if we created a commission that actually had the power to compel that information, because I will tell you, there are, I would bet 0 hospitals, clinics, providers that are not getting public dollars for the care that they are delivering, because so much of our healthcare dollar is a public dollar. And the health plans, the hospitals, et cetera, they're making a lot of money off of our health, and more importantly, they're making a lot of money off our sickness. And if that much of our money, nearly 40% of the state's budget, goes into healthcare, shouldn't there be a public voice that's got some view of the whole of it? I think so. And that would be the purpose of that commission. It's a big idea. It would need muscle, like the Public Utilities Commission has muscle over energy. But we did that as a state because we say, you know what? Everybody's got to have access to electricity. Right? Everybody has access to that. They need that. And we should make sure that there's a regulatory framework that makes it affordable for people. Same idea around the bigness, the largeness of healthcare. Because otherwise, we will continue to do what we're doing now, which is coming up with a really good idea. And I'm carrying all sorts of healthcare bills this year. One that gets rid of the copay, like let's get rid of copays on insulin and on EpiPens and on inhalers for 3 chronic conditions because they're very expensive for people. And let's cap the amount of out-of-pocket costs at $50 a month for people if they have those chronic conditions. It's a good idea. And it will help save money for people. But it is an intervention that will have, from my perspective, a shelf life, and we'll figure out how to get around that again. And I would rather have a commission that is publicly appointed that has the expertise and the ability to look at the whole of the system and make some judgment and put some brakes on the profit making of the current system so that we all have access to the care that we need when we're sick. That's how that would work from my perspective.
Samira, thank you so much for speaking. We appreciate it. Thanks. Finally, we're going to turn our attention to mental health care. This has come up over and over again in talking to people in our community. And speaking on mental health care is Karen Dolan. She is going to share her concerns now. Karen is a licensed clinical social worker who practices at the Journey Center here in Marshall. Karen.
Well, thank you, everybody. This is a big crowd. When I envisioned a round table, literally, I thought a round table was a great world to know. I just want to say thank you for joining us. It's nice to have so many people come and care about health care because it's going to take more than us to make some changes. So today when I talk a little bit about mental health care, I do want to acknowledge that I'm raised here rural, Marshall, Minnesota. Grew up in a farm family just south of town. Dad farmed during the 1980s where it was just a lot of poverty, and my mom cleaned houses. So with that poor background, I ended up going into social work because I ended up navigating so many systems to be able to utilize Minnesota Care, to utilize food shelves, to utilize our community systems to be able to help people. So it only made sense for me to continue to be a navigator, so to speak, to help other people access care and services. my background in social work, I've done so many different things, and ended up finding mental health care to be an area where I felt was underserved. And that's exactly why I went to school to become a mental health therapist. I've been serving our local community for over a decade here in Marshall. But I never would have been here if it wouldn't have been for public service systems like our public service loan forgiveness program to be able to pay for my education so I could leave Marshall, Minnesota, go up to the Twin Cities, get education that did not exist here. Because we don't have master's programs that you have to be able to be a mental health provider in Minnesota. So we don't have people that are growing up here that stay here and are able to serve our population. We end up not being able to have an ability to recruit people to Marshall or our local rural areas as well too. We have a huge mental health service provider shortage here. It's really sad to say that if someone is having anxiety, depression, even traumatic loss in their life, that we'd have to put them on a wait list for 1 to 2 months or even 6 months to have psychiatric care. We simply do not have the human resources to be able to provide care for this community. And that's our neighbors, that's our educators, that's our children. We don't even have places where our children that are in crisis can go to get 24/7 care as they work on stabilization. We have to, unfortunately, have our kids go to Sioux Falls, to Fargo, to Duluth, to Grand Rapids, Minnesota, where parents are still having to go up there to visit because we need that care continuing to happen. We don't have the services here. We have emergency care here, which we utilize and overutilize all the time for panic attacks, for healthcare, mental health care services, and don't get the appropriate individualized care for people. So provider shortage, I'd like to highlight that. How do we get people here to rural Minnesota and stay? As a provider, it's kind of a concern. We might get maybe 1 or 2 applicants for our community mental health centers, if even with loan repayment funding, and then we wonder if they'll stick. Are they going to stay? Why are they going to connect to our community? And most oftentimes they don't. So then we have a revolving door of therapists, psychiatrists, mental health providers in our community. And who wants to share their story all the time? Who wants to go get services when, how long are you going to stay? Are you going to be here for me? Because sometimes people may need care longer than just today. It's for years. Because we're working on generational trauma healing, we're working on repair, we're working on relationship building. So how do we find education, recruitment, retention in our area to have good service providers? So it's quality care over quantity care, about making mental health services a factory, which is sometimes what it has turned into. Our insurance companies rule mental health rule too. Myself now stepping into the shoes as a provider, it's pretty appalling to see local organizations giving their employees raises so that they can go ahead and raise all those CPT codes that as a provider I did not ask for. The inequity about CPT coding from insurance provider to provider about what they contract people with is appalling. And we're contracted not to share. So those types of services, if we could have some transparency about what does equitable service look like, equitable responsibility, equitable payment even for services would be amazing. I'm seeing a very scary trend in Minnesota and elsewhere too, where a lot of providers are choosing to go out of network, private pay, not accept insurance at all. This is happening in our metropolitan area and it is spreading. And it's in many states because insurance companies dictate quality of care, how many times you can be seen, and get in and get out repair. So we're seeing that trend even here in Marshall. I'll highlight with what's already existing with dental care. We don't have a provider in Marshall that takes medical assistance for dental care services. Not medical assistance, not a prepaid medical assistance plan under that umbrella. Our people have to go 45 minutes to an hour or beyond, which sometimes makes them miss work, take children out of school for half a day, because our providers are saying no to the insurance companies, but then that's making an economic privilege to pay cash out of pocket for services. So the inequity in insurance companies is pretty appalling, and it directly impacts our people It impacts anxiety and mental health about being able to even access or feel like I qualify or are welcome to even participate in healthcare. It's a pretty scary place out there. When I started out my private practice in 2019, I thought I was going to get an RV, to be honest with you. Because so many people can't get out of their home, and it's such a cost, even transportation, to come in from rural community to the office. So I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. It's going to be a nice little nonprofit, have an RV go out, and then COVID broke the world, right? COVID broke the world. And we ended up, as far as a win from COVID, there's very few, and it was horrible. But we got telehealth in our rural area where we hadn't experienced that before, being able to see a doctor on video, being able to stay in the comfort of my own home with anxiety because I can't get out. And now I can just video in. Now I can get at least some type of care through video services if I'm not able to make it in. And let's be real, this has been a horrific blizzard winter for us, right? So we're able to even have that as a backup plan to still get your care needs met if you're not able to make it in the office. So telehealth has been a huge win for our rural area, especially for specialty services where we aren't always able to take a day off to travel up to St. Paul to go and meet with our gender-affirming doctor for services. We want services here. We want accessibility here. We want equity and insurance and funds here too. So we need to keep telehealth. We also need to figure out some ways to be working on how to have a common universal language for healthcare. I can't tell you how often I work with people that are coming in for their own anxiety treatment on how to understand copay, deductible, what does this look like, how many sessions, and that shouldn't be part of my spot about can they even access care and what does it mean. And am I privileged enough to be able to go and get it? So having some kind of system that we can all speak a common language about healthcare, yours is the same as mine, we have similar services, I understand what you're saying. This can help to just alleviate some of that mental health care anxiety that we probably all feel to some degree and have to go and be like, how do you access this? What does this mean? How do I pay? Those types of things too. So those would be my biggest takeaways. Keep telehealth. We absolutely desperately need that. And finding some way in to find some recruitment, retention, funding support potentially to raise people that are homegrown here in a rural area, that get rural culture about what it's like to lose all your cows because there was a blizzard and they froze, and now you don't have money to help your kids with different things that they need for funds. And again, looking at how do we help healthcare? How do we help insurance companies from ruling healthcare and provider care too? Because we all just want to help people and not have to have the insurance companies dictate that, take it away, threaten it, change it without consent of our consumers that are actually using it. So, thank you.
I think an RV is a great idea. You know, maybe as we all recover in this post-COVID world, maybe it's still an option. Clearly, access to mental health is an enormous crisis here in our rural communities. Erin, sorry, her first response is Senator Murphy. Erin, can a public health commission help with the address this crisis, help this in any way, increase the number of providers or the number of beds or access to it? Could you speak to that?
Thank you again, and thank you for your story. And as I whispered, my mom cleaned houses for a living too, and I did that with her while I was in school. And I just lost my dentist because my dentist doesn't want to accept the insurance that I have through the state of Minnesota anymore because it doesn't reimburse enough, so I feel that pain. I do believe yes. So when I listen to this story about mental health care in particular, I think about the distribution of health care. And I'm so happy to hear you say that you think telehealth is a valuable intervention. I've heard that from nurses who live in rural places, both here in Minnesota and in Canada for a long time. And as long as it is working for the people who are getting care, then I think it is a worthwhile intervention, and I would continue to support it. Because we're not going to have, for instance, we're not going to have specialists everywhere. And you can get specialty care and specialty access via telehealth, and it's amazing what can happen over the waves, the airwaves, if you will, in terms of making sure that people get critical access to specialty care wherever they live. So I think it's a greater invention and advance for us. But when you think about the distribution of care, where is it? Where can you go? It is not really set by much public policy anymore, and instead set by the people who are building their businesses. So whether it is the health plans or the hospitals or the clinics, like how do we network ourselves together for our market share, rather than how do we make sure that we're distributing our healthcare in a way that people can get to it, that it's geographically balanced, and that it's balanced in terms of the things that we need. So if more of our healthcare providers are in the regional centers in the metro, it makes it harder for people to get access to that care in places across the state of Minnesota. So when I think about the distribution of care and care provision, the idea of a public commission to think about that and to make sure, hey, we want to make sure wherever people live in the state of Minnesota, they can get what they need. And because of the ways in which our healthcare system, the system, I suppose is the best way to describe it, have chosen to network themselves, whether it is networking providers and saying you're either in our network or you're out of our network, or we're not going to provide XY kind of care anymore in this part of the state. The story that always stands out to me the most is when they decided not to deliver babies up in the North Shore anymore because, you know, they're just not having enough babies, and we're going to send everybody to Duluth. And anybody who's made the trip from the North Shore to Duluth, if you think about that as a person who's having a baby, that's a scary trip. Same thing, right? When they closed the hospital in Albert Lea and said, y'all got to go over to Rochester, right? So I-90 in the winter, when we were talking about the winter, that's not an easy trip either. And if you need health care, making that trip, that's no good. So I think, again, a public entity that says, how are we going to make sure that there's equitable distribution, that there's really access, would be a smart intervention. And then regarding us, the providers ourselves, I know a lot of people who have stepped away from a career in healthcare because they don't like the dictates of the health plans in particular. You know, you get 15 minutes with a person, and you only get to do one thing at a time, even though a person who comes to that door to see you is maybe going to have multiple issues and you want to see them all. You're just going to take care of one so they get paid what they want to get paid. They break us apart. They think of us not as human beings coming to that clinic. So the way that we get paid is driving so much of the way that the care is being delivered. I've been working for a couple of years now on a piece of legislation that would we're trying to keep nurses in our facilities, and instead of building a pipeline of more nurses coming through, like what do we need to do to make sure our nurses are staying in the hospitals where they're working? You know, how do they have the satisfaction of their work, enough autonomy in their work, enough control in their work so that they can provide the nursing care that they choose to care, or that they want to care, that they know is the standard of care to which we're trained. And if we focus more on that retention, giving nurses a little more say in the work, maybe they would then choose to stay rather than go. Because we know the pipeline, we pipe a lot of people in and they're out in the first 5 years because it's not what they expected. There's an organization called the Center for Rural Policy Development, and if you look at their research, when they talk about rural places, they have made for me a pretty convincing argument that if we want to recruit people or keep people in rural places, which is something that I'm interested in, if that is the choice for Minnesotans that they want to make, then don't think about like jobs. Don't think about it through the lens of economic development. And don't think about it like industrial parks. That what we need to think about is there housing where people can live? Is there childcare so that when you go to work there's a place for you and your kids? Do you have access to health care? How's the state of our schools? Like, those are the things, those choices, broadband, are the choices that people are looking at when they're making a decision about where they want to live, not can I go get a job there? Because people are pretty mobile and we're able to get jobs in lots of places, especially right now. So I do think that the lens by which we're making decisions has got to shift a little bit, and healthcare is central to that. Like, people are going to go where they can get care. And if you can't get care, it's harder to stay in that space, which is why we see more and more people, I think, moving to regional centers and metro areas and suburbs, because it's just a little easier to make that part of our lives work. And that's no good for the whole state of Minnesota. That's not what I would want for us. I want people to live where they want to live, and if you want to live in Marshall, because that's where you grew up, then we should figure that out. So that's why I think the commission's a good idea, and that's why I think we got to keep thinking about rural places and making sure if that's where we want to live, that we can live the life of our choosing there.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you for sharing that, Karen. That was awesome. Now we're going. Now we're going to open it up for questions. If anyone has questions for Erin, Senator Murphy, I ask that you please raise your hand, and I will bring the microphone over to you so that you can speak loudly and clearly, so that we all can hear, and so that Senator Murphy can address your question. Oh my gosh, I know. Apparently people have a lot of questions. I'll start with you here in the front.
The potential Sanford-Fairview merger has led to great concern in our area. So how would a public health commission protect our access to health care in the case of a proposed merger like this?
I'm going to walk around with you, Anita. Make this work a little easier. So there isn't right now a place that considers those mergers. There's different pieces of law. You see the Attorney General weighing and asking lots and lots of questions. The Department of Health has some say, but there's not a place to say, is that the right choice for us? You know, Sanford has got a say, and Fairview's got a say, but their decision is going to impact a whole lot of us. Why don't we have a say as well? So the idea of that commission, when Todd and I first started talking about it, was a result of seeing what happened in the southeastern part of the state with regard to the Mayo Health System and all the closures that happen in clinics and hospitals. And we're seeing that happening in different places without a tool, a remedy, or even a place to put the question to say, is this the right thing for us? We need a place to say, is this the right thing for us? Not just for those two institutions, but for the people who live here. Yeah, that's what I think we should do. So I've been really, really, really proud of Keith Ellison in this fight, because he has really pushed open and made us examine the question in a more powerful way. But he doesn't have the authority by himself to say yes or no. And I think it would be wise for us to consider a way, because this is going to continue to happen.
And you have one as well, and then I'll get to your conductor.
Thank you. I grew up in the welfare system in Southwest Minnesota, and I'm now thankfully solidly middle class, but I have a son with a chronic health condition, and I have a stepdaughter with severe mental health issues. We were unable to get her services until it was, quite frankly, nearly too late. And now she has pretty much nothing at the age of 20. My question is actually around being from Pipestone and Lincoln County. I used to work in Minnesota, but I left to work in South Dakota because of our health care. I tried to go through Minnesota Care, but what I've learned is that Pipestone and Lincoln have some of the highest premiums through the online portal in the entire state. And I'm hoping there is a way to address that so that we have rural equity in what we're paying for those healthcare premiums through the Minnesota buy-in.
Thank you for sharing that. And was the coverage you were getting through MNsure or through?
Yes, through MNsure.
MNsure, right. That makes more sense to me. And they do have the ability to set premiums based on, you know, the sort of regional makeup. So we saw really high premium rates in southeastern Minnesota. That was the Mayo effect. And we see it in, again, disparately in different places, which is one of the things that we do in our healthcare system is say, well, this group of people together, they cost more. And so we're gonna band them all together in a pool, and then we're gonna charge everybody more because their health costs more, and we shouldn't all pay for that. That's why I'm a fan of a larger pool, without that ability to rate within the pool the way we do, because in the end, right, most of us can't control what comes our way in terms of a healthcare condition, right? You're not acting up and suddenly, Shazam, you have mental illness. That's not the way it works, right? It happens. It's a condition. And we should share together, I think, in the cost of that. Spread it out among all of us, because then it's probably going to be more affordable for all of us. So yes, right now, Minnesota Care's always had a set premium structure. There's a little bit of ability to charge, right? I think they used to be able to charge a little more premium for people who smoke cigarettes. But generally speaking, the premium rates are evenly distributed, and I think that is one of the values of this program.
My name's Vince Laporte. I'm a family physician, and I didn't milk cows. I grew up in Detroit. We made cars. But I'm sympathetic. My wife milked cows. The concerns I have are pretty small compared to what you raised. I'm very much aware of the things you raised. I've lived with those. I've worked here 45 years. The thing, we talked about cost, and everybody talks about making costs cheaper. I'm a primary care physician as a family physician, and we're desperate to hire more family physicians in rural Minnesota. They're a hard commodity to find. I'm delighted that Centricare at St. Cloud is going to start a new medical school, and you're aware of that. Of course, I hugely support that. And they're dedicated to producing family physicians for rural Minnesota. That's their promise, much like Duluth did, which has been very effective. One of the issues I bring to bear is about interpreters. Okay, we have a Karen patient navigator actually, which is better than an interpreter. Most of the healthcare systems now want to use phone interpreters. It's cheap. Years ago, 10 years ago, we had live interpreters in Marshall. A different corporation ran the clinic, and they were very good about encouraging live interpreters. And at many of the visits, the cost of the live interpreter's time was equal to or more than the payment from medical assistants. But nevertheless, that corporation didn't complain about it. Newer companies are not happy about it, and so they discourage them. So aside from a Karen patient navigator, we don't have live interpreters at our clinic anymore. I'll give you an example. This happened to me a couple of months ago. It was Sunday. It was an 18-month-old Somali child. It was a fussy child, a fever for about a week. The mom had some English, but not very much. The child cried during the whole visit, as they can. The telephone interpreter was turned on. That's what we had to offer that Sunday afternoon. Because of the child's crying, the telephone system just screeched. There was no communication. And so I did my best. I've had lots of practice examining crying children. That wasn't a problem for me, but getting detailed information from the mom was a problem for me. I told the mom that we'd be giving the child some medicine for 10 days. I got that much across. Mom said, no medicine. And I thought maybe she was just being stubborn. And so I had my nurse Penny come and I said, teach Mom how to give some Tylenol. Show Mom how to do this, like she didn't know. Penny returned in 15 minutes and said, Doctor, neither you nor I or that mom will give this child any oral medicine anytime soon. That is a fact. I said, okay, Mom is right. Mom's usually right. I said, okay, we will use shots. I don't like using shots. They're more expensive and more dangerous, but shots do work. I said, sign him up for shots for 3 days in a row. That worked. And that we did. Mom was concerned at the end of that visit. She said, some vitamin D, we need vitamin D. And everybody knows you're supposed to use vitamin D in small children, except when they're drinking formula. Vitamin D is in the formula, but it's not in breast milk. And I asked Mom if baby's using formula. Yes, bottles of formula, yes. And I know a lot about vitamin D. It's one of my pet things. I couldn't, because of I couldn't explain to her or reassure her a very basic thing because I didn't have language for that. At the end of the visit, I mean, it was like one of those visits where you're wrung out, you hope you did the right thing, you don't know if you did the right thing. At the end of the session, when we were closing up at 8 o'clock that night, I went out to the front desk. As I was leaving, the receptionist happened to be a Somali woman. I didn't know that. I could have asked her to come in and help us in an emergency. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to use lay people for medical interpretation. I get that. You're supposed to have trained people. But our current healthcare system discourages hiring high-quality trained people, and that's terrible. Part B, medical assistance programs. There are 2 carriers here now, Prime Health, Prime West, and Medica. Both of those make it very difficult for the few professional interpreters we have in this. We have some in Marshall. They're very good. Makes it very hard for them to bill directly. UCare that we had last year, our professional interpreters could have me sign a sheet. They would bill Arch, a company in St. Paul. That company would bill UCare directly, and it was no bite off the clinic. That worked very well. The other companies are very, let's say, circuitous about it. They're not reaching out to help us with live interpreters. I wish if you're gonna market medical assistance, those companies are primary commercial companies, that they had, if there was an assistance, they make live interpreters easily accessible and easily to sign up through professional associations. Currently, that's not the rule. They sort of have lip service to it, but when you drill down into it, not happening. So, I mean, my concern is smaller than many of yours, but it's my concern.
And it's a real concern, because if there's no language, like if you can't communicate together, you're not gonna get care.
80% of proper medical diagnosis, as that gentleman knows, is language. It's before you touch the patient. It's the discussion of your brain with their brain is the answer to most medical questions.
Thank you. My dad built cars for a living. I'm telling you what, this is like a communion of our backgrounds.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, and I see your hand right there, Allison, so I will bring you the mic.
Hi, my name is Allison. I currently work at a group home for mostly mental illness. Staffing is a major concern in facilities, either group home, nursing home, etc. What kind of policy provisions are being proposed in this current session to maybe address some of those concerns?
Thank you, it's good to see you again. It's good to see everybody again, by the way. I think that you're gonna see, I hope, because I'm not sitting on either of the healthcare committees, but I think as we come through this budget now, and we're just at the very beginning of setting the state's budget for the session, funding increases for the people who work in group homes, in nursing homes, in home care, etc. Because we have a significant shortage. And people will say, we have a worker shortage. I think that's a wage shortage. These are hard jobs. We know that they're caring for our loved ones, that we're expecting people to care for our loved ones, and they make, minimum wage at best, or maybe a little bit more than that, and they can leave that job and do an easier job and make a little more money is our problem. So I think we have to pump more money into the Department of Human Services so that people who work in group homes, etc., are making a wage so that they can do the job that they want to do and support themselves and their families. I really do think in this case, that is probably the most direct intervention that we can take. What do you think?
I would agree.
Okay. I'm going to work on that.
One more? I have been in healthcare for 55 years, the last 50 at Hendricks Hospital here. And so I'm having my anniversary here pretty soon. But my question is, and I asked our CFO about this, and he said, was asking about the changing critical access to emergency hospitals and then doing away with the critical access in some hospitals should they choose to do it. What do you know about that and what are your feelings on it?
So, happy anniversary. I haven't been a nurse for 55 years yet, but I hope one day. I haven't heard much about that. I think our critical access hospitals, we reimburse differently to make sure that there's a standard of care and an expectation for people. What's going to happen in this hospital is really important. So I'm not interested in dismantling that at all. So I want to dig into it a little bit more to see if I can figure out more about what you're describing.
He had talked to some other representatives and they had even discussed it at the board now, where a small hospital like ours with where maximum is 8 patients a day, usually sometimes it's 1 or 2, and where we would, any acute care patient would have to be transferred out and we couldn't keep them. Well, we do have some acute care that stays several days. We would still be able to keep the swing bed patients and we could do a 24-hour patient. But the acute care patients would have to be shipped out, which would hurt our hospital. And so I'm not sure how much you've heard about that yet, but I know it's in the works, it's in place.
So I appreciate you explaining that a little bit more, and I do understand that model. And back to that earlier discussion about what are the things that we need, in our communities, the idea that we would further strip away the care that you've been getting in your community. I would bet, not because we're thinking about access for people in the community, but something else would be driving that decision. I don't think that will support either decent health care when we're sick, emergency care, not really. And I think that it will further serve to empty out, if you will, our rural communities. I would want to go in the other direction and make sure that our rural hospitals are funded and supported in such a way that we think about them. Like I live in Marshall, Minnesota, where I go to this place where I know I will get care by the providers that I know in this community. It is an anchor point. It is a good job, it's a good place where people work, but it's an anchor point. Like I can live here because my family will get care.
And we have, with e-emergency, that is a great thing to have. I know we've got it in Marshall here, and we've got it in Hendricks, where you can just press this button and we are connected to McKinnon. And if your doctor isn't there yet, because it's a 30-minute wait for the doctor sometimes, and that connects us right to them by television, and they know where everything is at, and they can give us orders. It's a great thing to have. Thank you, Leon and Helmsley, on that.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we are going to take just a couple moments to take action together, and Anita's passing out a piece of paper. So one thing Senator Murphy said earlier that we could do on the Minnesota Care Public Option in particular would be to call legislative leaders and local representatives. So I just happen to have a sheet with their phone numbers on it, and there are about 40 of us here, and so we can get those calls in. And we heard Cindy talk about the difference it would make for her and her family and for so many farmers across the state, small business owners, those who don't have employment through their, insurance through their employer, but make just a little bit too much to qualify for Minnesota Care Public Option. Minnesota Care buy-in would allow them to buy in a sliding scale. So I'd like us just to take our phones out right now for a couple minutes and just call Speaker Hortman and call Majority Leader Dietzick and just leave a quick message with your name, where you're from, that you support the Minnesota Care Public Option, and why. You can just say simply, healthcare is unaffordable for too many Minnesota families, and I know this will help. Okay, so phones out. I know we're Minnesotans, and I know we can do this. We can do it right now. I'm gonna make a call right now too. It'll take just a couple minutes. I also have on this sheet, if you're from the Marshall area, your local senator, representative. If you're from outside the region, I don't have that. But let's take just a minute, make a couple calls, and then Anita is going to close up our time together.
Is it okay if I take your picture and then I'm going to send this picture to the majority of your district exam of the people who want to take your home?
I think it's great. Yeah.
I'll do that. Make your call.
And I'll do the same with Speaker Horton. Yeah. But we'll call them, and I'll say there are going to be a bunch of messages in your inbox. Okay, if you're wrapping up the phone call, please do. Just a couple of the things that are on this sheet. If you want to learn more about the public option, there's an information session online on Monday from 6 to 7 p.m. And there's a registration link here. So you can type that in. But no, this is happening from 6 to 7 o'clock on Monday. Give you more information. Also, you can visit mincarenow.org, and there's a website that has all kinds of information about the public option. It'll also give you a chance to contact your legislators and share a healthcare story. So if you have a healthcare story to share, and the way that this would make a difference for you or someone that you know and love, you can share that through that website. It's a way for us to pull together, to push this. It's not the whole answer for healthcare, we talked about that, but it would be a big step for our state and something we can build on. And it's a way for us to move forward together. Thanks for taking action. How'd that feel to be in this room? There's lots of noise. People are talking on their phones, calling our legislators. All right. All right. So Anita is going to come up and just close this up. But it's been a treat to be in the room with you today. So thank you.
Thank you, Todd. And again, thank you all for coming out. 45 of us came out for this event. So Beth and I had a little bet going, over under 30, over under 30. Beth, we won. Over 30. All right. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you to Todd Lippert for facilitating this event. Thank you especially for Senator Murphy for taking time to drive all the way down here in the middle of a busy legislative session. So it's interesting to hear the flurry of bills that are going through the session and getting approved. It's like, what's happening today, right? What's happening today, right? So thank you so much for coming out. It means a lot to us. It means that you see us, you hear us, and you care about us. So we appreciate that very much. And again, thanks to all of you. Now, go and enjoy your weekend. It's sunny, y'all. All right. Thank you.